Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto Uzumaki uncovered an ancient tomb and mastered Kurama, the shinobi god and his growing harem. Naruto x Conan x Hinata Hyuga x Sakura Haruno x Ino Yamanaka x Tenten x Tamari x Yugito ni x Samui x Mabui x Mei Terumi x Tsunade x Enko Mitarashi x Karen Uzumaki, Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Ino hummed to herself as she watered the plants in her father's shop. Even since Naruto had dropped the bomb that the leaders of 3 separate villages were coming to visit, Tsunade had stopped assigning any new missions that weren't D or S rank. S rank missions were too important to ignore, even with foreign ninja running around, while D ranks could be done without sending ninja away. She figured working in her dad's shop for a few hours while he had a meeting with the clan head was easier than a D rank mission, and it'd pay more too. She heard the front door open and quickly got behind the counter. "Welcome to the Yamanaka flower shop," she greeted. "How can I help you today?" She barely finished talking before Sakura grabbed her and pulled her close. "You can help me by telling me what the hell happened last night," she said. "How was it? Did you find out who these other girlfriends are? Why did you even agree in the first place? Are you dating now?" Ino quickly slapped her hand over Sakura's mouth. Sakura stopped talking but her eyes still shone with curiosity. "It was nice," Ino said. "We had a nice dinner, talked about each other, and he walked me home. And no, his other girlfriends never came up." She laughed at Sakura's confused expression. "I agreed to go out with him because I figured what's the worst that could happen? And I suppose technically we're dating, given that we scheduled training together, and I agreed to help with his gardening." She removed her hand and Sakura instantly began talking again. "How do you date a guy with other girlfriends without asking about them?" she asked. She didn't get why someone who was just as interested in Sasuke as her would go on a date with someone she barely knew. Then again, she barely knew Sasuke, so maybe she was just chasing anyone good looking. "Because they never came up," Ino said. "He wanted to know more about me and I wanted to know more about him. The other girls never came up. Once they get here I can get to know them. But until then I'd like to focus on me and Naruto." Seeing that Sakura still looked confused, Ino grinned. "If you're so curious about what the appeal is, maybe you should just go on a date with him yourself." Sakura blushed. She wasn't as against the idea as she was 3 years ago, but part of her still held out hope that Sasuke would come to his senses and come back to her. Maybe some other time," she stumbled out. Ino laughed at her friend as someone else came in. "Honey, I'm back," Inoichi said as he walked through the door. "Hello Sakura. It's been a while since your last visit," Sakura politely bowed. "Hello Mr. Yamanaka," she said. "Training with Tsunade has kept me really busy lately. I just stopped by to ask Ino about her date last night." "I'll kill the little bastard," Inoichi said, flying into protective father mode. Rationally he knew Naruto wasn't the type of person who would do something to hurt Ino. But in the eternal war between father and boyfriend there is no room for rationality. He better keep his hands to himself. "Daddy, we've been over this," Ino sighed. "He was respectful enough that he didn't even try to kiss me after the date." Inoichi continued muttering while Ino started walking towards the door. "Now I agreed to help greet the representatives from Suna, so if there's nothing else to do here I need to go." "Very well," Inoichi said. "Thank you for covering while I was busy." Ino gave him a hug, then left with Sakura right behind her. My little girl's finally growing up. Thinking of the 2 boys from Team 7 he shrugged. She could have done worse. == Ino and Sakura made their way to the front gates. Sakura was still trying to fork out Naruto's relationships in her head. The question that Ino hadn't been able to answer was, how exactly did it work in the bedroom? She got that Naruto valued his girlfriends as individuals. But was the bedroom purely one-on-one? Was it open door? Did you have to set something up with the other girl? Were you dating the other girls too? You're thinking of something perverted, aren't you? Sakura looked up and saw Ino was giving her a large grin. What makes you say that? She asked, knowing that lying to Ino was hard, given her Yamanaka training and heritage. You were blushing and muttering to yourself. She replied. I believe I heard you mention something about other girls joining. Sakura's blush grew worse. Is somebody interested in a little threesome action? Shut up. Sakura screeched, hoping that Ino wouldn't notice that she had hit the nail right on the head. Ino laughed and began running with Sakura right behind her. Sadly for Sakura, the gates came into view before she could catch and get revenge on her loudmouth friend. Hello Naruto, Ino sang as they approached. Jiraiya, Naruto, and Tsunade looked up from their conversation to see the pair of kunoichi approaching. Hello Lord Jiraiya, Lady Tsunade. Hello Ino. What brings you here? Tsunade asked. Her and Jiraiya had just finished making hotel arrangements since, according to Naruto, each leader would be bringing 2 bodyguards each. I agreed to help Naruto get Temari and Shikamaru hooked up, she said. Hopefully a girlfriend will motivate him to get off his lazy and train once in a while. Sakura and Tsunade snorted, causing Ino to hang her head. Yeah, you're right. She groaned. So what's the plan for today? I will be meeting with Gaara to begin setting up the framework of this alliance Naruto apparently threw together. Tsunade said while shooting Naruto a look. Naruto will be escorting his bodyguards around. Speaking of which, Naruto said, here they come. Looking up, everyone saw Gaara approaching with his cage hat on. As expected, Kankuro and Temari were right behind him. The Konoha ninja approached and they met right at the gate. It is a pleasure to see you again, Lady Hokage. Gaara said with a formal bow. Tsunade returned the gesture. It's a pleasure to see you as well, Lord Cage, she said. I trust you had a pleasant trip. Gaara removed his hat. Indeed it was. Normally I wouldn't leave Suna so soon after an attack, but thanks to Naruto the damage wasn't as severe as it could have been. Thank you. Don't thank me, Tsunade said. Naruto's the one who took off running the second he realized something was wrong. Then he comes back and announces he's throwing a party for other village leaders. Gaara smiled. Naruto tends to not be very clear when explaining things, he said, getting laughs from everyone but Naruto, who muttered angrily. I have sent several letters to the other leaders, but I've never had the chance to speak to them in person. I'm hoping this will lead to an alliance that can benefit all our villages. Very well, Tsunade said. Let's head to the Hokage Tower and begin negotiations. Naruto, stay out of trouble. Hey. Gaara, Jiraiya, and Tsunade began walking to the Hokage Tower, leaving everyone else behind. Come on Temari, Naruto said. We have a lot of work to do if you're going to score with lazy, dull, and scrawny. Naruto, don't call him that. Temari said as she lightly pushed him. The trio of blondes left with Kankuro chasing after Gaara, and Sakura once again left by herself. I wonder if I should have told them about Hinata. Sakura said to herself. Heading back home she shrugged. What's the worst that could happen? X equals. So Temari, Ino said as they walked through the park. What exactly is so great about Shikamaru? I mean, I've known him my whole life and he's nice, but I don't think I'd ever date him. Probably for the same reason I won't date Naruto. Temari replied. I see all the great things about him, but he's like a brother to me, and I'm not interested in sleeping with my brother. I guess, Ino said, but even if I wasn't that close to him, he's just so boring. Naruto burst out laughing while Tamari glared at Ino. I can't help it if I like the guy. She said. You don't seem to mind splitting Naruto with 4 other girls. Rather than get embarrassed, Ino grinned confidently. What can I say? He's just that amazing. Are you sure you don't want to date your not really brother? Tamari cringed. Look, she said. If someone wants to date a family member, they can go right ahead and do it. If you're close enough to someone that they're like a family member, then they're like a family member. But don't say someone's like a family member and then date them. Because then you're just going out of your way to be weird. As interesting as this is, Naruto said. I've located the target. He pointed to a nearby hill where Shikamaru was staring up at the clouds. Okay, here's the plan. Ino and Tamari leaned in, interested to hear what Naruto had thought up. Tamari, go tell Shikamaru he's taking you out and when to pick you up and where to take you. The girls stared at him. That's your plan? Ino asked. Just go tell him that they're dating. Naruto nodded and grinned at them. Well, I couldn't outsmart Shikamaru, he said. So I figured just tell him he has to do it. He'll agree because arguing will take more effort than just doing what you say. The girls couldn't think of any way to argue with that. Alright, let's do this. Tamari said as she confidently walked over to Shikamaru. Naruto and Ino watched as Tamari stood over Shikamaru and started talking. Shikamaru sat up and seemed to start panicking as the conversation continued. Finally he fell backwards in defeat as Tamari turned and walked back to them with a big smile on her face. Well, that was easy. So what are you going to wear? Ino asked. Seeing Tamari's confusion, Ino's jaw dropped. Oh my god, you've never been on a date before, have you? Seeing Tamari's blush, Ino grabbed her arm and dragged her away. Don't worry. I have a dress that will look absolutely gorgeous on you. Naruto. He turned and saw Hinata, who looked like she was on the verge of passing out. Sakura told me that, you were, dating openly and, I was wondering if perhaps you'd be interested in going out with me tonight. Naruto tilted his head in confusion. Hinata was interested in dating him. And weren't there rules for clan heirs and heiresses dating outside their clan? Wouldn't she need to give up being heiress to date him? How was she supposed to unite the main and branch families if she gave up being clan head? But there was one other problem that was a bit more pressing. Are you sure? He asked. You look kind of sick. Maybe we could do it some other time when you're feeling better. No, I'm fine, she yelled. Blushing at her outburst, she continued at a normal volume. That's just because I'm, nervous. I'll be much, better tonight. So what time should I expect you? How about 6? He asked, ignoring the fact that she had basically invited herself. She nodded and walked away with the biggest smile he had even seen on her face. Man, 2 dates in 2 days. If I'm not careful, I'm going to run out of places to take them. With that, he left to plan his date. X equals. Naruto sat across from Hinata trying to think of what to say. He had decided to repeat his date with Ino since that had gone so well. He probably should have told Hinata, since she was now a bit overdressed. But it was too late for that. Might as well enjoy it. So Hinata, what kind of training has your team done while I was gone? He asked, figuring that training was one thing they were guaranteed to have in common. Nothing special, I guess, she said. True to her word, she was now much calmer than she had been earlier. Kurenai showed us some genjutsu. Nothing too powerful, just enough to distract the opponent so we can move in and hit them with our taijutsu. Wow, really? Naruto asked. Kiba doesn't really seem like the genjutsu type to me. Or do you cast the genjutsu and Kiba goes in for the attack? Hinata frowned. We never really discussed how to use them as a team, she said. Kiba wasn't that interested in learning them, and Shino learned them, but he prefers to use his clan jutsu. Now it was Naruto's turn to frown. Not to be rude, but it doesn't really sound like she's taught your teammates all that much. Hinata scowled at him. You're not exactly one to talk, you know, she said. I seem to remember Kakashi ditched you for a month during the Chunin exams. Yeah, and that was the first and only time he did it, plus it was only for a month while I was a genin. Naruto said, ignoring the fact he still was a genin. It sounds like Kurenai has been focusing on you repeatedly for the past 3 years. Plus you're Chunin. Shouldn't you be learning something a little more advanced than some basic genjutsu? Genjutsu is Kurenai's specialty, Hinata said quickly, coming to her teacher's defense. Besides, Kurenai has always done her best to teach us. I'm not trying to say anything bad about Kurenai, he said. I'm just saying if you aren't learning that much under your teacher's best, you might want to consider getting a new teacher. Hinata could see Naruto's point, though she still didn't like him talking bad about the woman she thought of as a mother. So Naruto, she said, trying to lighten the mood. What did you learn over the past 3 years? Naruto tried to think of something he could tell her that wouldn't reveal things he didn't want revealed yet and lighten the mood. One very important thing I learned is, no matter how much they claim to know about ninja, never get advice from a civilian. Seeing Hinata's confusion, he grinned. I met this guy, who insisted that he'd read enough about ninja that he could give me some great advice. He kept insisting that I was going to be an amazing ninja based on my unique skills. Like how my henge is an actual transformation instead of an illusion. Hinata tilted her head in confusion. But, the henge already is an actual transformation, not an illusion, she said. Were civilians really that clueless about ninja? I tried telling him that, but he wouldn't listen. He said between my henge being real and my inability to create a basic bushin, I would never specialize in genjutsu. Did he think that because bushin aren't solid they're illusions? Naruto nodded. That's so. Hinata trailed off. She didn't want to call a civilian stupid for not understanding how ninjutsu worked. But being surprised that a transformation technique actually involved transforming, and thinking that clones, the most basic of ninjutsu, were genjutsu, was rather stupid. So, did you take any interesting missions while I was gone? Naruto asked. With the tension gone, they began exchanging stories. Hinata talked about some of the missions Team 8 had taken. Naruto talked about some of the sights he'd seen on his travels. Eventually they were walking back to the Hyuga compound. Tonight was pretty fun. Yes, it was just as wonderful as I always dreamed it would be. Hinata sighed happily. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Hinata made it sound like she had been planning this for a long time. Well, whatever. Well, Hinata, I suppose this is the end of our date. She pouted. I really enjoyed our time together. I hope we can do it again sometime. He turned and began to walk away. Wait, Hinata yelled. Naruto stopped and looked at her. This is the part where you're supposed to kiss me. Naruto smiled at her. I'll tell you the same thing I told Ino. We don't know each other well enough yet. Ask me again on our second or third date. Naruto was about to walk away when Hinata stopped him again. But I'm not like Ino. Naruto looked back at Hinata with a raised eyebrow. You don't need to prove yourself to me. Back in the academy when everyone else thought you were an idiotic loser, I noticed you. There was never a moment when I doubted that you would become Hokage. No matter how bad things got, you never gave up. You've always inspired me. You make me believe that I can be a better person, and accomplish my own dreams. I love you, Naruto. She stepped forward, preparing to kiss Naruto. To her confusion, Naruto took a step back. Hinata, you couldn't possibly be in love with me. Hinata was fairly certain she heard the sound of her heart shattering into a million pieces. Before tonight our longest conversation was just before the Chunin exams. Before that we almost never spoke to one another. You don't know me well enough to love me. But I do know you. She desperately said. I watched you. Whenever somebody said you couldn't do something, you trained yourself as hard as you could. And I watched and wished that I could be as brave and strong as you, so together we could help each other accomplish both our dreams. Hinata, that's not love. Naruto said. That's you using me as an emotional crutch. Hinata gasped. You're a lot stronger than you give yourself credit for. Just have a little more confidence in yourself and there's nothing you can't do. And I'll be right next to you the whole time, as a friend. So what? She asked as she glared at him. You're saying that if I was braver I wouldn't even want to be with you? That you'd just be an acquaintance and nothing more? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, he replied. And I can prove it to you. X equals. Come on please. Naruto said as he crawled on his knees next to Tsunade. You don't have to make her your next apprentice or anything. Just give her a little extra training so she'll be confident enough to stand on her own. Naruto, we've been over this. Tsunade said as Naruto stood up. If I'm going to make this alliance you've set up work, it's going to take a lot of my time. I won't have time to train Sakura and Hinata. Tsunade, you and I both know that Sakura has essentially finished her training under you. Naruto said. Anything you haven't taught her at this point, she's either learned it from Shizune, or she taught herself in her free time. Come on. I turned you 30 again. The least you could do is help my friend out. Tsunade sighed and rubbed her forehead. She knew that Naruto was right, both about Sakura and about her owing him. She was just lucky he was asking for something so mundane. Fine. She said. I'll work out a training schedule with her later. Now who exactly are we going to meet this morning? Thank you so much. Naruto said, pulling her into a hug. I promise you won't regret this. Tsunade smiled and returned the hug before they resumed walking to the gates. And today the representatives from AIM should be showing up. Tsunade noticed that Naruto seemed slightly nervous. I really hope you know what you're doing, she said to herself. The last experience she had with AIM involved her team barely managing to escape with their lives from Hanzo near the end of the Second Shinobi World War. She vaguely remembered something about Jiraiya leaving to train some orphans, but shortly after that she had learned of Dan's death and had stopped caring about anything. Relax. Naruto said as they finally reached the gates. Everything will be fine. I just need you to trust me like you always have. I do trust you, Naruto, she said as Jiraiya walked up. It's the bunch of people from AIM I don't know that have me worried. Historically, AIM didn't have the best relationship with Konoha, or any other hidden village. Speaking of, Jiraiya said as he stared down the road leading to Konoha. Any idea when out guests are going to get here? Naruto put a finger on his chin and thought. They should be here really soon, he said. I don't think it takes that long to fly here. Jiraiya and Tsunade shared a look. What exactly do you mean by fly? She asked, hoping this wouldn't turn into another wait and see situation. Before Naruto could respond, a loud shriek caused everyone to look up. Flying towards them was, without a doubt, the ugliest bird any of them had ever seen. It had 3 wings and 3 legs, causing its flight to be shaky. Its oversized beak resembled a huge drill more than anything else. The huge creature landed just outside of Konoha's gates. That's what I meant by fly, Naruto said as a trio of cloaked figures climbed off the bird's back. Spotting the familiar red cloud pattern, Tsunade turned to Naruto. I thought you said Akatsuki didn't exist anymore, she said. Why are they here? Naruto nervously scratched his cheek. Technically they aren't Akatsuki, he said. Akatsuki started out as a rebel group trying to overthrow Hanzo. Then some horrible stuff happened, that I promised I would help them fix, and they became a terrorist organization. Then I met them and we managed to talk things out. There aren't a terrorist organization anymore, but since they rule AIM now, they aren't exactly a rebel group. So they aren't really Akatsuki, but the red cloud symbol means a lot to them, so they kept it. Suddenly one of the cloaked figures turned away from the giant bird and began charging them. Tsunade was prepared for a fight but stopped when the figure began waving. Master Jiraiya, a female voice happily sang out. Tsunade saw Jiraiya freeze, an expression of shock and confusion on his face. No, he whispered to himself. It can't be. The figure jumped at Jiraiya and tackled him into a hug. As she did, her hood fell down, revealing a young woman with blue hair and pale skin. She had a pierced lip and eyeshadow that matched her hair. It's so good to see you again, she said happily. She opened her eyes, revealing them to be a steely gray. She let go of Jiraiya, who stepped back in confusion. Conan, how are you here? I thought you were dead. Conan turned and looked at Naruto. They stared at each other for a few seconds before a look of realization crossed his face. Oh crap, I forgot. He turned to his teacher. Conan and Nagato say, hello. Jiraiya face-palmed while Conan giggled as she approached Naruto. You know it's a good thing you're cute because you'd never get by with just your brain. Naruto pouted and pulled her into a hug. Hey, that's not fair, he said. I've been working on getting smarter. I hate for my stupidity to accidentally get you hurt. Conan laughed again before leaning forward and pulling him into a deep kiss. She pulled back and stared into his eyes. I missed you, she said before pulling him into another kiss. Jiraiya and Tsunade's jaws hit the ground as Naruto pulled back and kissed her cheek. I missed you too, he said while continuing to plant kisses on her cheek. Jiraiya was torn between happiness that Conan was still alive, confusion as to how she knew Naruto, and pride at Naruto for finally opening his eyes to the amazing beauty that is women. Before he could dwell on this, another familiar, but much less welcome voice spoke up. It's been a while, Jiraiya. The Toad Sage quickly assumed a fighting stance while turning and coming face to face with a pair of glowing red eyes. From your reaction I take it Lady Tsunade has ignored Naruto's request that the truth behind the Uchiha massacre be revealed. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. He thought Naruto wanted Itachi's final mission declassified. What did that have to do with the Uchiha massacre? Itachi Uchiha, Tsunade said in a voice that promised pain. Maybe you should consider the fact that discussing S-ranked secrets in public is a crime punishable by death. Lady Tsunade, he said with a polite bow. I apologize, but one way or another, the truth will be revealed. Whether you choose to reveal it, or me and Naruto have to tell everyone ourselves. Either way, you can't stop it. Jiraiya looked back and forth between the two. Just what was happening? Oh really? Tsunade asked. And even if you did that, just what makes you think you'd be accepted back here? Simple, he replied, I will aid the leader of AIM in taking down the traitor Danzo Shimura. Once his crimes are exposed, the general public will be far more accepting of me. Seeing an opportunity to learn more, Jiraiya spoke up. Just who is the leader of AIM? He asked. And why would he have such a problem with Danzo? Itachi gave a smile that reminded Jiraiya a little too much of Naruto. She is right over there, he said, pointed to the third figure who had just dispelled the bird summons that they had rode here. Jiraiya was rather surprised. The girl looked to be about Naruto's age, with flaming orange hair and too many piercings in her face. As she approached, she met Jiraiya's eye, causing him to freeze. A pair of very familiar purple ringed eyes stared at him. It's very good to see you again, Master Jiraiya, the girl said. Jiraiya stared blankly. He had seen and heard a lot of crazy things since Naruto came back, but there was no way he was actually seeing what he thought was in front of him. Nagato, is that you? The girl blushed and looked away. What the hell? How did this happen? She turned and glared at Naruto, who was no longer kissing Konan, but was still holding her closely as they talked. That conversation can be saved for later, she said, sounding slightly embarrassed. For now there are more pressing matters. Where is Danzo Shimura? Look, Nagato, whatever happened, I'm sure, he was cut off by her grabbing him and, with a strength her small frame shouldn't have possessed, pulled him face to face with her. He stared into her eyes. They were the coldest, cruelest, most hate-filled eyes he'd ever seen. Where is Danzo Shimura? Danzo paced back and forth deep in the bowels of his root facility. Even since his conversation with the Kyuubi Jinchuriki 2 days ago, the brat had proven impossible to get close to. He was almost always out in public places, usually with several other people. Stationing agents outside his home in hopes of capturing him while he slept had proven fruitless, as he was apparently sleeping somewhere else. Danzo growled. If that brat ran his mouth to Tsunade, then everything he had spent years building would come crashing down in an instant. You should not let your emotions get to you, Lord Danzo, a voice behind him said. That's what makes ninjas sloppy and causes them to fail. Isn't that your philosophy? Danzo turned and saw Itachi calmly standing in the doorway. You certainly have a lot of nerve showing your face here, Danzo said as he ordered his root agents to surround Itachi. I would advise against that, Itachi said. We have a very limited amount of time if root is to survive. Danzo gave a humorless laugh. You honestly expect me to believe that? He asked. It's bad enough the Kyuubi Jinchuriki found out about me through Orochimaru, but then you went and told him about my role in the Uchiha massacre. Not to mention you gave him Shisui's Kotoamatsukami. What possible explanation could you have to justify that? Itachi stared back at him. If Naruto was going to tell Tsunade about you, don't you think he would have done so already? Danzo glared. While he had found it strange that Tsunade hadn't been informed of his activities, he didn't think that justified anything. So what? He asked. Obviously the boy is planning something. Likely something that will allow him to dispose of me while making himself look like the hero. Truthfully, Danzo didn't think Naruto was capable of foresight on that level, but it was the best explanation he had at this point. Naruto isn't capable of planning something that complex, Itachi stated calmly. What he is capable of doing is trusting people who have already tried to hurt him in the past. For example, I told him that your encounter with Nagato happened after the Uchiha massacre and was an attempt by you to bring Nagato under your control. He now believes the Rinnegan is immune to the Kotoamatsukami. Danzo raised an eyebrow. Now that he thought about it, Naruto had referred to his alliance with Hanzo as coming after the Uchiha massacre. At the time he had been more worried about the fact Naruto was even aware of such things. But what Itachi was implying definitely had his interest. Do you believe the Rinnegan could resist the Kotoamatsukami? He asked eagerly. Having the Rinnegan at his disposal would make taking the position of Hokage much easier. Once it was secured, nobody would be able to oppose him. He could pluck them out and implant them at his leisure. I am unsure, Itachi said. Truthfully, me giving Naruto the other Kotoamatsukami was merely an educated guess, to ensure you didn't accidentally interfere before I could speak with you. I apologize for any problems I may have caused, but Nagato has been increasingly paranoid since allying with Naruto and I was unable to contact you. Danzo didn't drop his guard. In theory, what Itachi was saying could be true, but he hadn't gotten to where he was by being trusting. Trusting was what had allowed people like him and Orochimaru to prosper under the third Hokage's reign. Very well, he said. How would you recommend we proceed? This would be his test. Depending on how Itachi answered, he would know if he could go along with his plan, or if he would just kill him now. He could always use an extra pair of Sharingan for his arm. We don't have much time. Itachi said. Right now Nagato and Naruto are likely spilling everything they know about Root to Jiraiya and Tsunade. I placed a genjutsu on them so they won't notice my absence, but I doubt it will take them long to notice. From what you said earlier, I'm assuming you brought Naruto down here, correct? Danzo nodded. Then we'll need to fortify our defenses along whichever entrance you brought him in through. Do you know which entrance he escaped through? Danzo growled. Unfortunately, no, he said. The boy somehow produced a cloud of steam and managed to cover his tracks as he escaped. Do you know how he did it? Itachi nodded. It would appear that during his journey Naruto made a point of speaking to all the Jinchuriki. Danzo's eye widened. Was the brat trying to cause an international incident? It seems Jinchuriki are capable of sharing their chakra with each other. Because he has all of their chakra within him, Naruto is capable of using all of the Biju's unique abilities, though only at the most basic level. I believe the cloud of steam was a severely underpowered boil technique. Do you think this chakra transfer could be replicated in non-Jinchuriki? Danzo asked. The potential for all his root to have the abilities of all the Biju, even on the most basic level, was too good to pass up. I don't know, Itachi said, but perhaps those thoughts should be saved until after the situation has been dealt with. Danzo nodded, disappointed in himself for losing focus like that. Now since we don't know where he exited the base, we can't guard against them entering from that point. Unless you believe Root has the manpower to guard every single entrance. We do, Danzo replied. But our forces would be spread extremely thin. If they do enter through a different entrance than the one the Jinchuriki knows of, our forces will be overrun. But if we don't place anyone and they do enter there, nothing will stop them from reaching us. Itachi closed his eyes in thought. Perhaps we should keep our forces here, then send them to defend whichever entrance they attempt to enter through. I think it would be best if an explosion shook the base before Danzo could finish. Looking at the nearby security cameras, he saw Konan and Tsunade leading a platoon of Anbu in through the entrance Naruto had used. It appears we don't have time to continue this debate. Itachi said. What do you recommend we do? Danzo turned and pointed at the Root who had been standing by to see if Itachi was a threat or not. Fortify the entrance, he ordered. This is our only opportunity to stop them. The Root quickly and silently left. Itachi approached and watched the cameras over Danzo's shoulder. Between Konan and an Anbu with wood release, they appeared to be attempting to capture as many as they could. What a fool, Danzo said, showing mercy to a force created solely for the purpose of destroying her. This is why sooner or later she'll fail. What should we do about Kagaya? Itachi asked as Tsunade began to advance. Danzo scowled at the name. That's the second time I've heard her mentioned, he said. Who is this woman? What is she capable of? He sensed a spike of chakra and felt Itachi tackle him as a beam of light destroyed the security cameras. Looking up, he saw Naruto standing with a girl with the Rinnegan with a bizarre weapon for a hand and a woman in white with 3 eyes. That is what she is capable of, Itachi said blankly. Nagato's hand transformed back to normal while Naruto glared at Itachi. Itachi, what the hell? Naruto yelled. What happened to all that talk about restoring Konoha and cleaning out the corruption? Itachi stared back at Naruto. I lied, he responded. Naruto growled with anger before Nagato put a hand on his shoulder and stepped in front of him. Save your breath, Naruto, she said. It would seem once a traitor always a traitor. But he's not my concern. She turned and glared at Danzo. Danzo Shimura. She growled with a slightly psychotic grin. You have no idea how long I've waited for this day. I'm going to enjoy killing you as slowly and painfully as I possibly can. Danzo smiled and uncovered Shisui's eye. Unfortunately for you, Danzo said. Your vengeance will need to wait until you've finished serving me. He began channeling chakra to his eye when a sharp pain shot through it. Confused, he blinked a few times before he realized his field of vision had been narrowed. Turning his head, he saw Itachi standing next to Nagato and Naruto, with Shisui's eye in his hand. Nagato and Naruto both had stunned looks on their faces. "I didn't even see you move," Naruto said, amazed. "How did you do that?" Naruto's mouth shot open and the crow with Shisui's eye carefully took the other one from Itachi and dispelled itself. "When you transplant an eye, the optic nerves, muscles and bone all heal in a specific way," he said. In their paranoia, the Uchiha developed several techniques designed specifically for plucking stolen eyes out of their sockets. Naruto turned slightly green. "Itachi, you bastard," Danzo said as he covered his eye. "Whatever you're planning, you won't get away with it." Several Root appeared, having come to warn Danzo that the Anbu were slowly gaining ground. Itachi smiled. "I already have," he said. "My sole purpose for being here was to ensure that Shisui's eye wasn't damaged. Now that it's safe, I'll leave Nagato to deal with you." The Root ninja surrounded Itachi and stabbed him. Itachi burst into a murder of crows and the Root agents all fell to the ground with debilitating, but non-fatal wounds. Danzo growled and unsealed his arm. "Fine then," he said. "I'll finish you once I've finished the girl." Nagato's eyes narrowed in anger. Before either could make a move, the entire base shook again and sand began leaking through cracks in the walls. Taking advantage of Danzo's distraction, Nagato charged. "Die!" she screamed as she drove a kunai into his skull. She allowed herself to be satisfied for a few seconds before Danzo's corpse vanished. Nagato turned to face the sound of something being summoned. She saw Danzo standing on top of a colossal tapir. "Not bad, girl," Danzo said as Nagato growled. "But I won't be making that mistake again. Baku, destroy her." Baku's truck swung at Nagato, who held an arm up to block it. To Danzo's amazement and horror, instead of becoming a bloody smear on the ground, she was just barely knocked backwards. Baku's trunk was now being held by Nagato, who had sprouted several extra arms. She reached up and tore of her damaged cloak, revealing that she was wearing standard Anbu armor, only the sides of the shirt were slit, allowing her extra arms to move freely, and the shirt was short enough to expose her waist. "My turn," she said as she flashed through several hand seals. In a cloud of smoke, a gigantic centipede appeared and began crawling up Baku's trunk. The tapir snarled as it attempted to throw the giant arthropod off. It hissed and dug its fangs into the summon's nose. As the two fought, Nagato jumped onto Baku's back. Danzo spat several air bullets at her, which she quickly dodged. Focusing her chakra around her waist, she summoned her Asura Path's tail. The massive saw blade flew forward and cleaved Danzo in half at the waist. Just as the two halves were about to land, they vanished. With a scream, Baku dispelled itself, the centipede's venom finally getting to him. Nagato jumped back to the centipede's head and saw Danzo standing in front of her. "How are you doing this?" she asked. "I could ask the same of you," he said as he stared into her eyes. "I seem to recall the Rinnegan user was a young man. Yet there's no doubt your eyes are real. How did you get them, girl?" Nagato snarled and pointed her hand at him. "Stop calling me that," she screamed as a blast of gravity flew from her hand and blew Danzo to pieces. Without waiting, she jumped off her summon's head and, as expected, landed right in front of Danzo. He quickly moved to stab her with a kunai, while she reached out to grab him. Ignoring the pain in her shoulder, she quickly grabbed Danzo's face and channeled her human path, sucking out his soul. Immediately she knew sometime was wrong. Normally, souls stolen through the human path were like books that she could look through and read at her leisure. Danzo's was like a hastily written note that was rapidly burning up. Focusing her thoughts, she barely managed to find what she was looking for. She turned to face Danzo, who was beginning to look nervous. What are you so happy about? He asked, seeing the insane grin on her face. She pointed to Danzo's arm, where 4 of his Sharingan had closed. It was close, but I managed to find out the secret behind your little trick. She said. Placing a genjutsu on yourself to ignore every fatal injury you receive is rather clever. And rather enjoyable for me. I've already killed you 4 times. Now I'll get to enjoy killing you another 7 times. She threw a wave of shuriken at Danzo, who summoned a wall of wind to block them. Nagato quickly used her Preta path to break through the wind wall, then quickly used her Asura path to put her fist straight through Danzo's chest. Unlike before, he crumbled to dirt. Looking around, she saw Danzo was gone. So, the rat's trying to run away, is he? She said to herself. She turned and faced Kagaya, who had been standing off to the side, while Itachi and Naruto had kept any root agents from interfering. I believe we had a deal. Kagaya scowled at being ordered around, but didn't say anything. Instead, she held out her hand, opening a portal in the middle of the room. A few seconds later, Danzo fell through, looking confused as to how he had ended up back there. It's useless, Danzo, Nagato said. As long as Kagaya is here, any path you run down, any rock you hide under, and hole you crawl down, all of them will lead back here. You can't escape me. Now die. X equals. Conan ducked under a stray kunai before sending another wave of paper forward. As Itachi had predicted, the root members were all charging into the bottleneck created by attacking one entrance. They didn't have any plan of attack, they just suicidally charged, hoping to take out as many Anbu as they could. What they hadn't counted on was Gaara, Conan, and an Anbu with wood release. Between the 3 of them, they were able to immobilize the root long enough for the Anbu to incapacitate and capture them. Unfortunately, unlike them, she was limited by how much paper she could carry. The situation was made worse by the fact that the battle had been dragging on longer than expected. Nagato, Naruto, please be safe, she whispered to herself. She knew she shouldn't be thinking of them while fighting a battle of her own, but she just couldn't help it. The 2 people closest to her were fighting the monster who had ruined her life. Not to mention their backup was an even worse monster. Naruto may have been willing to trust Kagaya, but she didn't think she ever would. The fact that her compliance in this plan had been earned by promising her that she could drain the life from all the root that were too far gone to be integrated back into the regular Anbu just showed what kind of person she really was. Those root would be killed either way, but that didn't change the fact that Kagaya's loyalty was being bought with human lives. As she blocked several shuriken, the sounds of a massive explosion shocked the base, causing the lights to flicker. All the root froze, making them easy to capture. As Conan pinned them, she heard one whisper. Lord Danzo is dead. Conan's eyes widened in amazement. Had they done it? Had they really done it? Was that monster really dead? Conan impatiently waited for the Anbu to arrest the last of the root before she ran towards the center of the complex where it was likely they were fighting. When she got there, she froze in terror. The entire room was missing. In its place was a huge empty sphere with pipes and wires hanging down. It looked like something had taken a massive bite out of the complex. She saw Danzo's beaten, bloody corpse at the bottom of the pit, but there was no sign of anyone else. Nagato, Naruto, she called nervously. Her voice echoed across the empty room. Nervously, she began climbing into the pit. Nagato, Naruto. Her breathing began to grow labored as fear slowly crept into her soul. Reaching the bottom of the pit, she began frantically looking around. There were no signs of life anywhere. Nagato, Naruto. Panicking, she turned and glared at Danzo's corpse. Why do you keep having to ruin my life? She screamed as she kicked his body into the corner. Conan grabbed her head and screamed in pain. Once again, Just as everything was going right with her life, the world saw fit to take it all away from her. Everything in front of her began to grow hazy as tears filled her eyes. She sobbed as her vision grew black. Blinking a few times, she realized the haze was actually space twisting and bending in front of her. Like a gaping maw, space ripped open. Kagaya calmly stepped out, looking no worse for wear. With a loud yelp, Itachi, Nagato, and Naruto fell out behind her and landed in a haphazard pile of limbs. Naruto weakly gave a thumbs up. "Thanks for the save, Kagaya," he groaned. Kagaya said nothing as she began to walk away. Konan quickly ran past her and grabbed her friends in a bone-crushing hug. "Nagato. Naruto. Thank God," she said as she started crying tears of happiness. "I was so worried. I thought you were dead." Naruto happily hugged her back, while Nagato awkwardly joined in. "Don't worry, Konan," Naruto said. "I'm not going to die until I become Hokage, and help you and Nagato restore aim." Konan smiled and started kissing Naruto, making Nagato very uncomfortable. Luckily for her, Itachi chose that moment to speak up. "As sweet as this moment is, do you think you could get off me?" he asked. Konan and Naruto quickly jumped away, while Nagato and Itachi stood up and dusted themselves off. "Thank you. It was getting uncomfortable down there." Konan and Naruto blushed brightly, while Itachi and Nagato left to assist Tsunade with rounding up the last of root. Konan pulled Naruto into another hug when she noticed Kagaya staring at them. She still wasn't sure about the three-eyed princess, but she had to admit, the apathetic stare she was giving was much better than the hateful glare she had constantly worn when she had first woken up. "Thank you," Konan said. Kagaya's eyes widened in surprise for a few seconds before she turned and walked away. Naruto, thinking that Konan was talking to him, pulled back so he could look into her eyes. "It was nothing," he said. "I'd do anything to keep you happy. I love you, Konan." Her eyes began watering again as she pulled Naruto into a slow, deep kiss. "I'd do the same thing for you," she said. "I love you too, Naruto Uzumaki. == The sun began to slowly sink below the horizon as a trio of ninja sat on top of the Hokage monument. It had been a long day of sorting through all the files pulled from Danzo's base. Even with his suicide seal destroying a large chunk of his base, there was still more than enough evidence, and now loose-lipped ex-root, to wipe away any positive memories of Danzo, not that there were many of those to begin with. The only two people with anything positive to say about him were the other elders, and it took only a fraction of Danzo's crimes being exposed for them to quickly withdraw their support. "Man, it's been a hell of a day," Naruto said. Konan and Nagato nodded in agreement. "I just really hope Tsunade doesn't kill me for keeping her out of the loop so long." Konan giggled while Nagato shook her head. When they had told Tsunade what Danzo had been doing under her nose, she had flipped out. After calming her down and pointing out that they needed an actual plan to take Danzo down, she had immediately turned on Naruto, demanding to know how he could keep something like that from her. "She was rather upset with you," Nagato said with a small smile. "But all things considered, I doubt she'll kill a shinobi of your caliber over something as minor as not charging into a situation without backup." Naruto laughed. "I don't know about that," he said. "At this point, that's pretty much what she expects from me." The two Aim Kunoichi joined him in laughing. Konan leaned onto his shoulder. "Well, Luckiest, you've started working on that," she said. "And thanks to you, that monster is finally dead and Yahiko can finally rest in peace." Naruto smiled and kissed her head. "It's no problem," he insisted. "Any decent person would want to put a stop to him. Now who wants to celebrate? Ramen's on me." Konan shook her head as they stood up. Well, at least she could meet this Ayame girl Naruto had mentioned a few times. Plus the ramen from there was Naruto's favorite food besides red bean soup, so it must have been good. Nagato, would you like to join us? At that, Nagato's good mood seemed to deflate. No thank you, she said blankly as she stood up. I hope you two enjoy your date. Conan, I'll see you back at the hotel room. She quickly walked away, leaving Conan and Naruto looking at each other confused. Well, I wasn't going to make it a date, but if you'd like, he held out his arm. Conan, would you do me the honor of accompanying me on a date? Conan snickered and took his arm. What's wrong with Nagato though? Conan frowned. I'm not sure, she said. She has been rather preoccupied the past few days. I'd assumed she was thinking about her confrontation with Danzo, but now I'm not so sure. Naruto shrugged and they agreed to keep an eye on their friend. They were halfway to Ichiraku when a rather upset voice called out. Naruto. The pair turned and saw another blonde teen stomping towards them. What's this I hear about you charging into a base full of heavily armed traitors? Naruto nervously scratched the back of his head. Now Ino, he said. To be fair, I teleported into a base full of heavily armed traitors. And I was just running interference. And a lot of them were brainwashed, so they aren't all totally traitors. Ino clearly wasn't amused. And Tsunade was there. Ino pinched the bridge of her nose. Naruto, you shouldn't be so reckless, she said. You know your friends will always be there to help you, right? Naruto and Conan both smiled at Ino's statement. Thank you, Ino, he said. I promise that I won't go charging into danger in the future without making sure my friends know I'm doing it first. Ino couldn't stop herself from laughing. Fine. But be careful, she said. Don't forget that you still owe me that second date you promised. Conan perked up at this. Oh really? Conan asked. That didn't take you very long, did it? Naruto nervously laughed while Ino noticed her for the first time. Conan, this is Ino Yamanaka, he said. Ino, this is Conan. She's one of my girlfriends. Conan held out her hand, which Ino shook while blushing. Well, that's not quite the first impression I wanted to make, she said while looking Conan over. Her cloak left a lot to the imagination, but from what she could see from the open front, Conan easily beat her in the looks department. It's fine, Conan said. You were just worried about him. It's sweet. Plus you're rather cute. Ino blushed while Conan laughed. Relax. While I'm not opposed to it, 3 people to a bed isn't exactly my thing. But we should definitely get to know each other better. How about tomorrow? I'm free all day. Ino nervously nodded and began to walk away. Later, Ino. Naruto yelled. Now about that ramen. With that they resumed walking to Ichiraku. When they arrived they entered and saw Shizune talking to Ayame. Are you serious? Ayame asked. Shizune nodded, causing Ayame's mouth to drop. Really? I mean, I always knew he was a little strange, but. Are you sure? That's what Karen told me. Shizune replied. She seems to know what she's talking about. Plus it makes sense when you think about it. Ayame nodded in agreement before noticing her favorite customer was back. Naruto. You're back, she cheered. And who's this lovely lady? Shizune turned and blushed slightly. Hello Naruto. Conan, she said. Are you two on a date? Ayame looked at Shizune confused before Naruto's answer shocked her. Yeah, we are, he said as they sat at the counter. Ayame, this is my girlfriend Conan. Ayame blushed as she shook Conan's hand. Shizune finished her ramen and started to leave. I suppose I'll see you tomorrow then. Naruto and Conan waved before turning back to Ayame and placing their order. Ayame brought them their ramen and Naruto started telling her about his adventures. Eventually the two left and were enjoying walking in the moonlight. So Conan, Naruto said. Shall I escort you back to your hotel room? Conan frowned and pulled Naruto close. Naruto, I was really worried about you today, she said. You and Nagato were fighting that monster and I was so scared something would happen. She pulled Naruto into a hug and rested her head on his shoulder. I just don't know what I would do if something happened to you. Naruto began stroking her hair. Don't worry, Conan. He whispered. I'll always be here for you. I promise. Conan smiled and kissed his cheek. I know you will. She said. Instead of escorting me back to my hotel, perhaps you would do me the honor of escorting me back to your place. Naruto pulled back slightly surprised. Really? He asked. Not that I'm complaining, but I figured with everything that happened today you'd want to spend some time with Nagato, remembering Yahiko. Conan lowered her head. Naruto, I spent years wallowing in Yahiko's death, she said. I know that's not what he would have wanted, but I couldn't stop myself. Our relationship didn't advance because we were in the middle of a war. I want to take advantage of this. We both know what's coming. Please. It's been so long since you left AIM. Naruto placed a finger under her chin and turned her towards him. As you wish. He said as he kissed her. X equals. Sorry if it's a little messy. Naruto said as they entered his small one-room home. I haven't really been here a lot since I got back. It's fine. Conan replied as she looked around. It's a lot like you. Simple, to the point, and comfortable. Naruto smiled and pulled her into a deep kiss, which she quickly returned. She pushed off his jacket while he took off her cloak. The pair slowly made their way over to the bed, kicking off their shoes as they went. Separating for air, Naruto pulled his shirt off, followed by Conan undoing the ties of her halter top. She reached for the waist of Naruto's pants but was stopped by Naruto pulling her hands above her head. Relax, Conan, he said. We have all night. Conan's groan told her exactly what she thought of that, but didn't resist as he pushed her onto the bed and climbed on top of her. He pulled her into another kiss before slowly making his way down her neck, making her bite her lip in anticipation. Naruto began planting kisses along her while his hands reached up to give them a squeeze. She moaned as he slowly kissed around her areola but didn't touch her. To her frustration, he slowly moved to her other, which he gave the same treatment. Naruto, please, she begged. Stop teasing me. Naruto grinned and wrapped his lips around her. She moaned loudly as she dug her fingers into Naruto's hair. Naruto began making his way across her chest as his fingers lightly pinched and tugged the he had already enjoyed. After bathing her other in affection, he began teasing it as well while kissing down the valley of her. Stopping only to run his tongue over her pierced bellybutton, he quickly reached the waist of her pants. Undoing them, he pulled them off, revealing her soaked panties. Well, somebody's eager. He teased before slowly kissing up her thigh. To Conan's annoyance, just as he reached her crotch, he pulled away and slowly repeated the process with her other thigh. Finally, he reached the top and started kissing her lower lips through her underwear. Conan groaned in pleasure as her lust began to run wild. Naruto stopped and pulled her panties off, leaving the blue-haired angel before him. Before he could resume his task, he suddenly found himself on his back, pinned beneath her. There was a fire in her gray eyes and a predatory grin on her face. My turn, she whispered before kissing him again. She kissed down to his chest and began teasing his while undoing his pants. She began running her tongue over his abs while messaging the bulge in his underwear. Seeing he was ready, she stripped him down before spinning around into her favorite position. Naruto licked his lips before running his tongue over her, dripping. She moaned loudly before leaning down to take Naruto into her mouth. Enjoying Naruto's taste after their months apart, she began to message his balls, hoping to get a taste of his seed sooner. Naruto quickly returned the favor, bringing 2 fingers up to spread her lips while rubbing her with his thumb. She squealed in delight before taking him as deeply as she could. Naruto began fingering her as he sucked her while running his tongue over it. Conan screamed around his tool as he removed his fingers and rapidly licked up her leaking essence. Conan's taste combined with the vibrations of her voice set Naruto off, allowing Conan to once again taste the man she loved. She swallowed before turning and kissing her way back up his body. As they kissed, Naruto flipped them over and put Conan on her side. Putting her leg over his shoulder, he stopped his just as it was about to enter her. "Are you ready?" he asked gently. She eagerly nodded and reached down to spread herself further. Naruto pushed in and the pair groaned at the feeling of once again being joined. Naruto began slowly pumping his hips as he reached down to squeeze her again. "Faster, Naruto," she gasped. "Please don't hold back. I want you to ravish me." Naruto grinned and began to pick up speed. "Yes, yes, yes. Just like that," she cried. She reached up and undid her hair. Naruto always went wild when she had her hair down. As she hoped, Naruto began moving even faster. The hand on her began twisting her while his other hand began to tease her. Conan reached up and pulled her leg back while her other hand began to play with her unoccupied. "Conan, I'm close." Naruto grunted as sweat ran down his face. "Where do you want me to finish?" Conan licked her lips, tasting her own sweat. "Inside me, please," she begged. "I want to feel you come inside me." Naruto pulled his hand from her and ran it up her arm. She let go of her leg, letting it rest on his shoulder as she took his hand in hers. Their fingers intertwined as Naruto switched from rapid shallow thrusts to slow deep thrusts. Reaching his end, he gave her a pinch. Conan threw her head back and screamed her release as her inner muscles milked his, hoping for an injection of his essence. He happily complied and after a few more deep thrusts let go and filled her up, triggering a second orgasm in her. Lowering her leg, he kissed her deeply before she rolled them over so she was on top. "You're still horny?" he asked playfully. Conan simply smiled and rocked her hips back and forth until she felt him harden inside her. She turned and started riding Naruto while facing away from him, giving Naruto a wonderful view of her. After a few minutes of enjoying Naruto inside her, Conan suddenly stopped and lifted herself off him. She looked over her shoulder and smiled at him. "I want to try something new tonight," she said, sounding both excited and nervous. Conan leaned back and placed the head of Naruto's against her. She groaned in slight discomfort as he slid inside her, causing him to put his hands on her to stop her. "Are you sure?" he asked concerned. "I don't want to force you to do something you're uncomfortable with." Conan smiled at his concern and nodded. After a few seconds, Naruto pulled his hands away, allowing Conan to completely bury him in her rear. She moaned at the strange, but not unpleasant sensation of having her filled. She began to roll her hips as the strange feeling gave way to pleasure. Naruto, seeing that Conan was getting into it, decided it was time to start moving. When Conan brought her hips down, he thrust up. Not expecting the sudden penetration, she squeaked in pleasure and fell back onto Naruto's chest. They laughed and began kissing as they resumed their thrusting. Naruto, hoping to enhance the experience for Conan, reached down and pulled her legs up to her chest. Planting his feet on the bed, he began pushing into her as fast as he felt he could without hurting her. "Oh God," she moaned. "I can feel you so deep inside me. Harder. My harder." Naruto was shocked since Conan rarely swore even during. But not wanting to disappoint her, he increased the pace of their lovemaking. She looked over her shoulder and pulled Naruto into a deep kiss he quickly returned. He felt her begin to tighten around him. "God, you're gripping me so tight," he groaned. "You must really like having your butt played with." Conan responded by pulled him into another kiss. She sucked on his tongue before separating, leaving a trail of saliva between them. "Shut up and keep my," she panted. Naruto began thrusting as deeply as he could. Conan felt him swelling inside her, pushing her closer to the edge. Don't stop. Keep going. I'm almost. Oh, I'm coming. She arched her back and screamed as her internal spasms set off Naruto, who filled her with his cum. Breathing heavily, Naruto let go of Conan's legs and pulled he into a hug. He could feel her trembling in the afterglow of her orgasm. So, what brought that on? He asked curiously. Conan moaned in loss as she removed Naruto from inside her butt. She rolled over and kissed him again. I thought that you died today, she said as she stared into his eyes. I've been thinking about this for a while, but I was always too nervous to ask. Today showed me if you want to do something you should go ahead and do it. Because tomorrow you might not get the opportunity. Naruto reached up and wiped away the tears that were forming in her eyes. I'm sorry I worried you, he said as he kissed her again. Seeing her smile, he decided to lighten the mood further. So anything else new you want to try? Conan laughed and shook her head. Even if there was, I'm far too tired right now, she said. Besides, you'll need all your energy tomorrow when your guests from Kiri arrive. Naruto smiled and pulled the blankets over them and hugged her close. They began slowly, gently kissing until they fell asleep in each other's arms. Across town, another Aim Kunoichi was having a far less pleasant night. Nagato stared at the moon through the window while strumming her fingers on the mattress. As she expected, Conan never came back. It was very easy for her to imagine what the two of them were up to. Unfortunately, this was causing her body to react in a way she wanted to avoid. She rubbed her legs together before stopping, as her clothing was another reminder of all she'd lost. Currently she was wearing nothing but a small shirt and a pair of panties. When she had first switched bodies, she had avoided panties, not wanting to feel any more feminine than she already did. However, her curiosity had slowly gotten the best of her and she soon found herself wearing panties on a regular basis. But in the last few days, thinking about, and being around, Naruto had reminded her that she was supposed to be a boy. A boy currently sleeping in women's panties. Damn it, Naruto, she muttered to herself. She ran a hand over her face before stopping to play with one of her piercings. The piercings she got because of Naruto. Shortly after her accident, Naruto had asked why all the paths had piercings while she didn't. She had explained that those piercings were actually chakra control rods stabbed deep into the bodies she was using. Naruto had offhandedly mentioned it was too bad since he thought her new body would look cute with piercings. She hadn't thought much of it, but a few days later, while her and Conan were getting reacquainted with the people of AIM, they had stopped by the shop where Conan had her piercings done. After a small debate with herself, she had gotten several black studs that resembled the chakra control rods her paths had. At first she wasn't sure why she had when Conan had made a joke. Maybe you did it to look good for Naruto. At first she had laughed it off, but as time went on she found herself entertaining the idea more and more. She shook her head and fell back. No, she told herself. I do not like Naruto. I like women. She had a crush on Conan for as long as she could remember. When it was clear Conan was in love with Yahiko, she had stepped aside and let them be together. Then Yahiko had died and both of them had sunk into darkness until Naruto had convinced them that they were wrong. At first Nagato had thought this was an opportunity to finally date Conan. But not only had Conan started dating Naruto, she was sharing Naruto with several other women. Then to add insult to injury, Naruto turned her into a woman. Now Conan would never be interested in her. Or would she? She once again imagined Conan and Naruto making love in front of her. This time, however, Conan pushed Naruto off and jumped at her. Conan pinned her down and gave her a very seductive smile. Relax, Nagato. Conan said. Let me show you just how good it feels to be a woman. Conan began kissing down her neck before taking her into her mouth. Nagato moaned out loud before she realized she was touching herself. She pulled her hand away and blushed in embarrassment. She rolled onto her stomach and tried to go to sleep. But as soon as she closed her eyes, her imagination took over. This time she was pinning Conan down. Let me return the favor, she whispered as she kissed down her body before coming face to face with Conan's. She began eating out her childhood friend before she felt something long and hard rub against her. It slowly pushed into her. Realizing what she was about to do, she pulled her hand away again. She shook her head. She did not like Naruto. She tried to shift to get comfortable, and the pillow underneath her brushed against her groin. She shivered and her mind took over again. She stared down at Naruto's caring blue eyes. Not interested in having Conan join us, he teased. Nagato said nothing. She simply began to rub herself against the pillow underneath her. The feelings she had been bottling up for months were boiling to the surface. Combined with the fact she had never explored her new body, she very quickly reached the climax. But how she reached it mortified her. Naruto! She screamed as she imagined him coming inside her. She spent a few seconds catching her breath before she realized what she'd just done. Damn it! She whispered as she tossed the soiled pillow aside. She walked into the bathroom and turned the shower on as cold as it would go. She pulled off her shirt and underwear before looking at herself in a mirror. She didn't recognize the person staring back at her. She wasn't a teenage girl, she was an adult man. I do not like Naruto, she told herself before she climbed into the shower. She stood in the freeze water, hoping it would snap her out of whatever was wrong with her. But as she shivered in the cold, all she think was how warm it must be between Naruto and Conan right now. Damn it! Naruto yawned as the morning sun shining through his window woke him up. Feeling something warm curling up against him, he blinking in confusion a few times before last night came rushing back to him. Looking down, he smiled at the blissful look of content on Conan's face. He carefully brushed her hair out of her face before he leaned down and kissed her forehead. Her eyes slowly opened before she smiled at him. Good morning, he said as he continued to stroke her hair. How did you sleep last night? She smiled and leaned up to kiss him. I slept wonderfully, she said. She kissed him a few more times before she noticed the clock and pouted. Looks like we better get going if we don't want to be late. Naruto looked at the clock before he nodded and climbed out of bed. Looks like you're right, he said as he stretched. You can get a few more minutes of sleep if you want. Conan threw off the covers before she also stretched, catching Naruto's eye in the process. No thank you, she said. You know I've never been one for sitting around when there's work to be done. Naruto smiled and moved to the bathroom door. In that case, let me take a shower, he said. Then I'll make us some breakfast and we can get going. Naruto disappeared into the bathroom and the sound of the shower turned on. Conan went over to her discarded cloak and pulled out a piece of paper. Grabbing a pen off the table, she wrote down what Naruto had told her over ramen yesterday. With a flick of her wrist, the paper folded itself into a butterfly and flew out the window. Listening to the shower run, Conan grew a grin that would make her teacher proud. Finding something new she wanted to try, she headed to the bathroom to join him. Might as well make his morning fun, since she doubted the rest of his day would be as enjoyable. == Naruto and Conan walked down the street with pervy grins on both their faces. While Naruto had been rather surprised when Conan had snuck up on him in the shower, he wasn't about to start complaining. So was that another on of the new things you wanted to try? He asked. Conan shrugged as they entered the market. Not really, she said. I just thought it would be a fun way to start the morning. The pair shared a Jiraiya-style giggle. No arguments here, Naruto said. As they passed a group of people, Naruto overheard their whispers. His smile grew bigger, though it was now much less perverted. Sounds like word of Itachi is starting to spread. Conan listened to what was being said and shared Naruto's smile. I hope everything works out for him, she said. Considering how long he has been thought of as a traitor, I imagine that some people within Konoha will have a hard time accepting the truth. Naruto nodded, knowing what that was like. It had taken 13 years, plus taking down a Biju, just for him to get a little respect. I'm sure everything will work out, he said. After all, Itachi was an Uchiha. They couldn't do anything wrong. There were probably people who, upon hearing that the Uchiha were planning to start a civil war, respected them even more. Idiots. Hopefully you're right, she replied. He deserves to have something go right for him for once. As they arrived at the gate, Conan was surprised to see someone she'd never met was talking to the greeting party. Seems we have a guest this morning. Naruto followed her gaze and saw that beside the obvious Jiraiya and Tsunade, plus Haku and Karen, who were expected due to who was showing up, Kakashi was also there. Hey Kakashi! Naruto yelled. What's up? Kakashi looked up from his book and smiled at Naruto. He looked at Conan and, after giving her a look over, turned back to Naruto. You tell me, he said in a teasing tone. After that mission to Suna you disappeared. Next thing I know you're teaming up with the leaders of other villages and traitors who aren't really traitors to take down the actual traitors. An invitation to the party would have been nice. Naruto laughed and scratched his head. Sorry about that, he said. I'm sort of making this up as I go along. Anyways, I wanted you to meet Conan. She's my girlfriend. Kakashi looked surprised for a moment before his smile returned. Good for you, Naruto. I'm glad you finally found someone to share your life with. Kakashi held out his hand to Conan. Hello, I'm Kakashi. Hello, I'm Conan, she said as she shook his hand. Naruto's told me all about you. And don't worry, I'll take good care of him. I'm great at sharing. She pulled Naruto into a hug and the two shared another pervy giggle. Haku and Karen rolled their eyes, while Jiraiya, Kakashi and Tsunade tilted their heads in confusion. Before they could ask any questions, Haku spoke up. Hey look, Haku said nervously. The group from Kiri is here. He and Karen both paled in fear. Noticing everyone staring at them, he pulling Karen into a hug. They're scary, he said. Karen quickly nodded in agreement. Jiraiya pulled out his spyglass and focused on the three approaching figures. Let's just see how scary these guys are, he said. Focusing on the first figure, he was disappointed to see they were wearing a cloak that obscured all their features. The only thing he could tell was that based on their height they were an adult. Looking to the next person, he saw they were wearing the exact same cloak. However, unlike the first person, this person was much shorter, most likely around Naruto's age. They were also carrying a very familiar bandaged blade. Wait, Jiraiya thought, is Kisame working with them? But the seven swordsmen never parted with their blades easily. Is Kisame dead? I'll have to ask Naruto about this. He turned his attention to the Mizukage and his jaw hit the floor. What is it, Jiraiya? Tsunade asked. What do you see? Jiraiya made a series of unintelligible gargles. Tsunade sighed and grabbed the spyglass from his hand. What the hell is so interesting? She asked. She looked through the spyglass and her jaw dropped as well. She had always thought of herself as straight, but even she had to admire the beauty approaching. She was practically on legs. Two long slender legs that were barely concealed by her revealing blue dress. She had a bust that could easily rival Tsunade's and long flowing brown hair. Looking up, she revealed a delicate face that somehow still oozed power. This was a woman who wasn't to be messed with. Hello, she said in a voice that sounded as she looked. I'm Mei Terumi, the fifth Mizukage. I understand you've been expecting me. Tsunade quickly recomposed herself. It's a pleasure to meet you, she said. I'm Tsunade, the fifth Hokage. This is my teammate Jiraiya, the famous copycat Kakashi Hatake, and I believe you already know Haku and Karen. And since he's the one who put this all together, you obviously know Naruto. She cheered as she grabbed him and pulled him into a hug, burying his face in her chest. It's so good to see you again. She then noticed Conan smiling at them. Messy hair, no fresh makeup. You certainly enjoyed yourself last night, didn't you? Conan smiled and nodded. I certainly did, though I don't think this is the best place to go into details, she said. As they talked, the three adults standing off to the side looked more and more confused. Kakashi was about to speak up when his attention was drawn by the shorter figure growling in anger. Stupid Mizukage. They mumbled in a female voice that Kakashi thought sounded vaguely familiar. Ordering us to wait around while she flirts with Naruto. Yeah, that's a real good use of your authority. Well, Kakashi said, hoping to both ease the tension and get some answers. Seems like Naruto's become quite the ladies' man if he has so many girls after him. Shut up, Bakakashi. The girl said. Kakashi froze as his eyes shot open. Only 2 people called him that and both of them were dead. What did you just call me? He asked in a shaky voice. The girl leaned towards him as best she could with her short stature. I said, shut up, Bakakashi. She replied. Right now my boyfriend's other girlfriends are hogging him and I haven't seen him in forever and it's been a long trip and I'm in a really bad mood. So please shut up. Before she could continue, the other figure put a hand on her shoulder. Really? They asked in another female voice that sounded familiar. After all this time, that's the first thing you say when you meet up with him. The younger girl sighed. I'm sorry, she said. I've just been so stressed out lately. She stepped forward and pulled her hood off, causing Kakashi's heart to freeze. Staring back at him was the face of his supposedly dead teammate, Rin Nohara. Hello Kakashi, she said pleasantly. It's nice to finally see you again. She then flashed him a toothy grin, showing that all her teeth had been sharpened into fine points. Sitting on her forehead was a protector with the symbol for Kiri on it. What the hell? He shouted as he jumped back in fear. His mind filled with images of the nightmares he had suffered after Rin had died. Ones where she proudly claimed she had been working for Kiri all along and was off to destroy Konoha. Are you okay? She asked nervously. You look like you're about to have a heart attack. She reached out to help him, but he took several steps back and pulled out a kunai. How are you even here? He asked. Did someone use the Edo Tensei on you? He didn't want to fight his former teammate, especially if she was an unkillable zombie. Sort of. She said, that's how we got here, but as of right now I am a fully living, breathing human being. But how? Kakashi asked again. Rin smiled and pointed over to Naruto. Her smile faded when she saw Mei still had Naruto's face in her chest. Enough, Mei. Let someone else have a turn, she said as she pulled Naruto away and hugged him. Jiraiya giggled as he wrote in his almost full notebook, while Tsunade pinched her nose in annoyance. This is great, Jiraiya said. Normally when girls fight over a guy it's a lot more violent and a lot less. Before he could continue, his notebook was snatched away. And just what makes you think they're fighting? Jiraiya stared into the purple eyes framed with red hair he thought he'd never see again. Kushina? He asked with his jaw on the floor. You're telling me Naruto actually did perfect the Edo Tensei? Sure, he'd read Naruto's notes, but he thought Naruto was working on theory, not actually out resurrecting people. I wouldn't say perfect, she replied. There's still a few kinks to be worked out, but you have to admit it's a vast improvement. But still, this is amazing. He said. You have to show me how this is possible. He pulled out his actual research notebook, covered in dust from lack of use. I can show you the seals later, but the details will have to wait until tomorrow's meeting, she said with a little wave. But until then, the three of us have plans. Speaking of plans, she trailed off and narrowed her eyes at the other redhead trying to sneak away. She shot a chain at Karen, tying her up and dragging her back. And just where do you think you're going? It's so good to see you again, Lady Kushina, Karen said, failing to keep the fear out of her voice. You must be tired after your long trip. So there's no need for training, right? You just want to relax. Kushina grinned in a way that reminded Karen far too much of a certain snake. Oh no, you don't, she said. If what I heard is true, you were barely able to hold off an S-rank nin. I trained you better than that. I was in the middle of a city. I couldn't just smash everything in my path, she tried to defend. Besides, those monsters of his were way too fast for me. You know what I'm hearing? Kushina asked. You need more training. No time like the present. Let's get training. She began to drag Karen off to the training grounds. No, no, please no, she begged. No more training. Haku, save me. Everyone turned and looked to see Haku being dragged in the opposite direction in Samahata's jaws. Sorry, Haku, Rin said. But you know the rules. If you want to be seen carrying one of the 7 swords, you need to show the world you can handle it. You didn't even use it in your last fight. Not exactly the image Kiri wants to project. With that, the two kunoichi vanished, taking their students with them. Well, it looks like it's just the two of us, Mei said. So I guess we can have a little fun. She leaned close and began to run her fingers up Naruto's chest. But first, she grabbed Naruto's throat. What's this I hear about you failing to injure Sasori with the lava release techniques I trained you with? I wanted to capture him to prove a theory I had, he said. I underpowered the technique. Clearly, I underestimated just how strong his puppet's armor. And it never occurred to you to try all those boil release techniques I showed you. Naruto gulped nervously. Truthfully, in the heat of battle, he had forgotten about the boil release he now possessed. And considering the pride Mei had in her abilities, and all the time she had put into training him, she would kill him if she found out. Actually, there's a funny story behind that. Seeing the look on Mei's face, he hung his head in defeat. Yes, I forgot. Mei smiled and ran a hand through his hair. See how good it feels to be honest, she said. I think your honesty deserves a reward. Guess what your reward is? Training, Naruto asked while scratching his head. The smile on Mei's face told him he was spot on. Will you at least be gentle? Oh Naruto, she laughed. You should know by now I'm not gentle. As he was being dragged away, Naruto asked the question that had been bugging him. How do you know all this? Mei laughed and held up a piece of paper with several notes written on it. Conan was kind enough to share all your stories from Suna. Naruto's eyes widened as he looked at Conan, who was waving at him. Conan, you traitor! He yelled dramatically. How could you do this to me? Mei vanished with Naruto, leaving a laughing Conan, a confused Jiraiya and Kakashi, and an annoyed Tsunade. Well, if you'll excuse me, Conan said. I'm going to spend the day with Ino, to make sure we can get along well enough for Naruto to date her. Conan left, followed by Tsunade. Since I'm not getting any answers until tomorrow, I might as well get started with Hinata's training, she said. Jiraiya and Kakashi turned and stared at each other. Do you have any what just happened? Jiraiya asked. Kakashi shook his head. No. I have no idea either, he admitted. After a brief pause, Kakashi spoke up. Want to go see if there's any good-looking women at the hot springs? Jiraiya nodded and the two took off in hopes of distracting themselves from what had just happened. Equals X equals. Karen screamed and ran as the ground behind her exploded. Kushina's chains whipped and thrashed behind her. Come on. Kushina yelled. How do you expect to fight like an Uzumaki if you just keep running away? Karen ducked as a chain nearly took off her head. Kushina's chains were easily just as fast as Kakuzu's heart monsters. It called a strategic retreat. She yelled back. She whipped a chain to intercept Kushina's, but several others raced forward and ensnared her. A strategic retreat will only get you so far, she said. Keep in mind, the sooner you defeat me, the sooner you can save your boyfriend from the jaws of the shark. Karen's eyes shot open before she screamed and shot her chains at lightning speed towards Kushina. She blocked them and grinned wickedly. There's that Uzumaki fire. She cheered as their chains clashed together. Hurry up. Sharks aren't known for being merciful. Equals X equals. Haku jumped out of his ice mirror as Samahata's teeth shattered it to bits. He quickly held up Kubikiribocho and blocked Samahata as it lashed out at him. Rin flashed Haku a fanged grin. Is this what the seven swordsmen have been reduced to? She asked. A medic from a different village is more skilled with your blades than you are. Haku wiped his forehead. I'm trying. He insisted. It's not like you became an expert overnight. He attempted to form another ice mirror, but Samahata quickly ate it. You're right. I didn't. She responded. But once Samahata chose me to wield it, I dedicated myself to learning everything I could about swords, even though it's not my main field of interest. She rested Samahata on her shoulder as it finished eating Haku's mirror. There's no doubt you've improved since I last saw you. But you're still overly dependent on your bloodline. Instead of using your bloodline to enhance your swordsmanship, you use your sword as a last resort when your bloodline fails. I am not dependent on my bloodline. Haku insisted. He noticed that Rin was copying his stance and making the same hand seals he made for his mirrors. Looking down, he saw that he was making the seals without even realizing it. Lowering his hands, he tightened his grip on Kubikiribocho. I see you're finally getting serious, she said. Now let's get started. They charged and their blades smashed together. Equals X equals. Come on, Mei. Naruto begged. Can't we talk about this? He ducked under another glob of lava as Mei slowly approached him. The entire training ground was covered with lava and steam. You asked me to train you in lava and boil release, she said while smiling sweetly. If you aren't using them correctly, that just proves your training is incomplete. She took a deep breath and blew a cloud of steam at Naruto. The steam slowly cleared, revealing Naruto was gone. Mei looked around, but saw nothing but flaming debris everywhere. Sensing an attack from behind, she leaned to the left, allowing a lava bullet to fly over her right shoulder, singeing her dress. Oops. Naruto said. That dress wasn't expensive, was it? Mei smiled and ripped the shoulder off her dress, revealing her smooth, unblemished skin. Don't worry, she said in a tone that scared Naruto. It's nothing you can't afford to replace. Naruto swore he heard his wallet scream in pain. Grinning, he blew a cloud of steam at her, which quickly began to eat away at her dress. You know, if you wanted to get in front of me, you could have just done it, he said. There's no need to drag me all the way to the training grounds. He spat lava at her, which she easily blocked with lava of her own. Don't get too, she said. You may be the world's strongest genin, but it's still far too soon for you to beat a cage. The two resumed spitting lava at each other as their fiery dance tore up the training ground. Equals X equals. Are you okay? Ino asked. You seem like you're a million miles away. Conan smiled and set down the cup of tea she was drinking. I apologize, she said. I know today was supposed to be about the two of us, but I'm really worried about my friend Nagato. The past few days she's been rather moody. Today when I went back to the hotel, she was still sleeping. She left out the part where she found Nagato and soaking wet in a room that smelled a lot like Naruto's had that morning. You said Nagato is the leader of AIM, right? Ino asked. Conan nodded, so Ino presented her theory. Maybe she's just relaxing before the big meeting tomorrow. Conan laughed at her idea. While she could probably use it, Nagato isn't a relax type of person, she said. Ever since Naruto came around, she's constantly trying to improve AIM. When she can't do that, she trains. So how exactly did you and Naruto hook up? Ino asked. He may be unpredictable, but having 4 girlfriends is a little odd, even for him. Conan smiled and sipped her tea. Well, when Naruto first showed up in AIM, me and Nagato were in a rather bad place. We were actually planning on taking over the world. Or destroying it. Truthfully, I didn't really care one way or the other. Ino's eyes widened at how casually Conan talked about planning on taking over the world. When Naruto showed up, we tried to kill him, but he didn't put up much of a fight. Instead, he let himself get captured, then asked us why we were doing what we were. We told him about all the terrible things that had happened to us. He told us all the terrible things that had happened to him. But he never let any of it get to him. He showed us how if we continued down the path we were on, we would have destroyed ourselves. Conan wiped a tear from her eye while Ino stared enthralled. We agreed to try things his way because we could easily go back to our original plans. But with Naruto guiding us, AIM improved by leaps and bounds. Life just got better and better, and soon before I knew it, I had fallen in love with him. Wow, Ino said, amazed that Naruto had already accomplished so much. That's so sweet, she gushed. But where do the other girls come in? Well, it turns out he was already dating a girl from Kiri. Conan replied. Rin Nohara. She's here for the meeting, so I'll have to introduce you in the next few days. Well, Naruto said he'd date both of us if he could, but he couldn't, so he wasn't going to cheat on Rin. I figured Naruto got where he was by being crazy, so I'd try the same. So I wrote Rin and requested permission to also date Naruto. Obviously she said no, and I wanted Naruto to be happy, so I backed off. But we kept writing each other, and somehow I managed to win her over and she agreed to let me date him. He was skeptical at first, but eventually he went with it. Of course, as soon as May found out, she was all over us begging for a chance, and somehow at some point Kushina decided to join in. Still not entirely sure how that happened. She mumbled to herself. Ino now had a thoughtful expression on her face. Maybe your friend Nagato has been moody because she also wants to date Naruto. Ino suggested. Conan rubbed her chin in thought. That does seem like the most obvious answer, she said. But as far as I'm aware, Nagato likes women. At least I think she does. She seemed to be interested in me back when she was a man. She drank her tea, then noticed the look of confusion on Ino's face. I think you're going to need to start from the beginning for this one. X equals. Hinata approached the training grounds, wondering why she'd been called here. She had been trying to think of a way to show Naruto that she did care and did deserve to be with him when an Anbu had approached her and told her to report here immediately. Entering the field, she saw Tsunade doing warm-up stretches. Hello, Hinata, Tsunade said. According to Naruto, you have some problems with confidence and have latched onto him to make up for it. He's asked me to train you so you can stand on your own. Hinata blinked in confusion. After everything Naruto had said, why would he ask Tsunade to train her? Was he playing hard to get? Was he leading her on? Maybe he felt bad and was trying to apologize. Or maybe he pitied her and would pretend to like her for her sake. No, Naruto wasn't some scumbag who would pretend to like somebody if he didn't really care. I thank you for this wonderful opportunity, Lady Tsunade, Hinata said with a bow. I'm certain that with your help I'll be able to prove myself to Naruto. She looked up and saw Tsunade's fist flying towards her face. She was barely able to dodge as Tsunade left a huge crater where she had used been standing. Let's get one thing straight, Tsunade said as she pulled her fist from the ground. I'm not here to help your love life. I'm here to turn you into a strong and confident kunoichi. If you fail here, I won't hesitate to kick you out of the Shinobi program. Do I make myself clear? Hinata's eyes widened in shock before she quickly settled into a fighting stance. Perfect, Tsunade said. Let's see use what Kurenai's taught you. X equals. Good job, Karen, Kushina said. We finally started increasing your attack speed. Karen weakly gasped while leaning heavily on her knees. Now we just need to work on your stamina. Karen slowly trudged forward and glared up at her. You, she groaned as she weakly swung her fist. It harmlessly grazed Kushina's stomach as she collapsed and fell asleep. Kushina giggled and picked her up. How cute, she said. She thinks she's ready to take me. Don't worry. We'll get you there. You have a legacy to help uphold after all. With that, Kushina carried Karen back to the hotel while planning the next tortuous phase of her training. X equals. Good job, Haku, Rin said. You're finally starting to get a hold of your swordsmanship. Haku wiped the sweat from his forehead. Thanks for going easy on me, he said as they shouldered their swords. I don't think Karen will be making it back to our new place tonight. Ah, you finally found somewhere. Haku nodded and Rin gave him a high five. Good for you. I'm sure it wasn't easy traveling with Naruto. No time to yourselves, plus Karen's libido. That must have driven you crazy. Haku nervously laughed. Well, it doesn't help her libido rubbed off on me, Haku said. Rin laughed and Haku blushed knowing there was no clean way to say that. I would say take it easy on her tonight, she replied. But I think you were right when you said she won't make it home tonight. Aren't you glad you have a teacher who doesn't torture you? Haku smiled and was about to agree when Rin grabbed his face. Haku, what the hell's wrong with your teeth? Haku squirmed and tried to get away, but Rin's grip held tight. If you want to be in the scene swordsman, you need to look the part. She opened the pouch on her waist, revealing several medical tools. Haku made several grunts that caused Rin to release him. What was that? She asked. Don't you think I should have this done by a professional dentist? He nervously asked. Rin shrugged and held up what looked disturbingly like a hammer and chisel. Relax, she said as she grabbed Haku and pinned him down. I'm a medic. If something goes wrong, I can fix it. Haku tried to protest but stopped when the chisel reached his teeth. The more you squirm, the longer it'll take, she warned. We all had to do it. Besides, knowing Karen, she'll love this. Haku relaxed and opened his mouth wide. Rin rolled her eyes and got to work. Why is everyone I know a pervert? XXX equals. Naruto slowly opened his eyes as he tried to figure out where he was. The last thing he remembered was being enveloped in a cloud of steam when a lava bullet had flown right at his face. Because of the chakra strain from constantly mixing elements, he was barely able to protect himself. Now he was watching the sunrise through the window of what looked like a fancy hotel room while something very warm and soft was pressed into his back. Good morning, handsome, a voice whispered in his ear. It was then that Naruto realized that he was in nothing but his underwear. Rolling over, he saw Mei, dressed in the same manner as he was. Good morning, my shining beauty, he said. Mei smiled and pulled him into the kiss he thought he was receiving yesterday. The kiss grew more heated as Mei rolled on top of him. I'm sorry I let you down, Naruto said suddenly. Mei tilted her head in confusion as Naruto continued. I begged you to train me in lava and boil release, and then I went and ignored everything you taught me and just charged in like I used to when I was younger. You must be disappointed in me. Mei smiled and kissed him again. I'm not disappointed. she said. You're an amazing ninja, but you're still young. You can't expect to do everything perfectly the first time. The fact that you've managed to learn 3 advanced nature releases despite not having any bloodline is a testament to just how much potential you have. Naruto smiled and pulled Mei into a hug. Thanks for the encouragement, Mei, he said. I honestly thought that you were mad at me. They resumed making out before Naruto noticed what time it was. I'm not sure we're going to have enough time to fool around this morning, he said. Mei looked at the clock and smiled. Nonsense, she said happily. We have plenty of time. She began rubbing his hardness through his boxers. Besides, it doesn't feel like you want me to stop, she whispered. She rose above him and turned to face away from him. She sat down, pressing her panty-covered mound against his groin. Naruto groaned, pulling a smile from Mei. See, I told you you'd be interested. Who wouldn't be interested with someone as beautiful as you? He asked as he ran his hands up her legs before grabbing her. Seems like someone's missed spending time with his Mizukage, she moaned as she pressed against him harder. Of course I missed you, he replied as he pushed up against her. Not a day went by that I didn't think of your smiling face. She groaned and began grinding against him faster. Well, I suppose I shouldn't hold back then, she said as she leaned forward and began shaking her butt for him. I wonder if the others would get jealous knowing just how much you think of me, she teased. Naruto grinned and smacked her. She moaned and pushed back harder. What makes you think I wasn't thinking of them also? He asked as he thrust up into her core. All of you are special to me. I could never choose between you. Mei leaned back and Naruto's hands traveled up her body before grabbing her massive chest. So you were thinking about all of us? She moaned. Were you thinking about doing naughty things with 2 of us at the same time? Naruto grinned as his trusting became faster. Why? Were you hoping for something like that to happen? Mei began shaking as she shook her head. Don't be ridiculous, you little pervert, she said as her movement grew frantic. There's no way I'd ever be interested in something like that. Oh please, Naruto said with a roll of his eyes. And I suppose you were constantly checking out Kushina because you love her fashion sense. Mei bit her lip and knew she'd been caught. I can't help it, she cried. You both have such cute faces, with such kissable lips, and intense eyes, and great bodies and... She tensed as she soaked her panties while Naruto filled his boxers. Mei collapsed against Naruto's chest and he pulled her close. You know, I'm starting to think you just like me for my body, he said, getting a laugh from Mei. As much fun as that was, I think we'd better get ready if we don't want to be late. Mei stood up, but instead of getting off the bed she bent down and pulled her panties off. Naruto's mouth watered as she exposed her and dripping. We have time, she said as she pulled his boxers off. Besides, you need to make up for causing me to make such a mess of my panties. Before he could point out that she started it, she dropped onto his pole, burying it deep inside her. The pair moaned before Naruto tried to get things back under control. I really don't think we have time for this, he groaned. Mei smiled and stopped moving. She looked over her shoulder and started at Naruto. Then by all means stop me, she said. They stared at each other for a few seconds before Naruto began thrusting into her. That's what I thought. She quickly began moving back against him. Oh God, it's been far too long. She squealed in delight as Naruto spanked her again. That's it, baby. Me harder. Just like that. Naruto grunted as he thrust himself deeper. You so naughty, Mei, Naruto teased. I wonder how Kiri would react to learning just what a dirty girl their Mizukage is. Mei moaned and fell back against him. Who gives a? She groaned. There's nothing wrong with a woman doing dirty things with the man she loves. Naruto's eyes widened as he slowed down. While Mei had never tried to put any distance between them, she had also never really opened up to him. Sure, they had shared their hopes and dreams with each other, but in the bedroom it was usually more about having fun instead of physically bonding. Naruto suspected it had to do with the fact she was interested in getting married while he didn't want to put any one of his girls over the others. Do you really mean that? He asked. Mei blushed as she realized what she'd said. She looked like she was struggling to find the words to say. Before she could speak, Naruto kissed her and began rubbing where they were connected. You don't have to answer right away, he said. Take as long as you need. But no matter what, I'll always value our time together and I'll do everything I can to make you happy. Mei moaned as Naruto resumed his previous speed. Oh, she groaned as Naruto pinched her. Keep it up. She arched her back as Naruto pumped her full of his seed. They two lay together, basking in the afterglow of their lovemaking, until they looked at the clock. Oh shit. Equals X equals. Everyone glared at the pair as they raced into the meeting room. They had thrown of the same half-burned clothes they had trained in yesterday. You know, Nagato said. If you are going to call together a meeting of 4 separate villages, the least you can do is show up on time. Naruto noticed Nagato's glare and remembered Konan's concerns from the other day. Seeing the normally stoic Nagato stewing in anger just looked wrong. He'd definitely need to find out what was upsetting her. Well, since we're all finally here, maybe you can finally explain what's going on. Tsunade said with a look that promised pain if Naruto kept beating around the bush. Mei took her seat while Naruto walked over to a nearby map. Basically, this is what's happening, he said as he pulled out a kunai. He slashed the map along the middle, splitting the north and south halves. Pointing at the northern half, he continued. Otogakure, Takigakure, Iwagakure, and Kumogakure have joined forces and are plotting the destruction of Konoha and most likely destruction of its allies. Tsunade stood up in shock. We need to stop this from happening, she said. How would you recommend we stop them? Naruto sadly shook his head. It's too late to stop them, he said. The deal is in the final stages. All we can do now is prepare and hope we can keep the casualties low. The Fourth Shinobi World War is about to begin. Everyone's eyes widened in horror. Apparently even his allies hadn't realized just how bad things were. Tsunade sat down and stared at Naruto. Maybe you should start from the beginning. Well, I guess the beginning was when I met the Sage of Six Paths. But you all know about that already, right? Everyone nodded, so Naruto continued. Well, I figured the best place to start would be the Biju. I knew Akatsuki was collecting them and they were most likely being manipulated by Zetsu. Of course, at the time the only other Biju I knew of was Shukaku, so I headed straight for Suna and asked Gaara for help. After he explained what was happening, we were able to convince Shukaku to help us track down the other Biju. Gaara said. That was also when we discovered Jinchuriki can share their Biju's chakra with each other. Is that how Naruto was able to know that Suna was under attack? Tsunade asked. Naruto nodded and channeled Shukaku's chakra, causing his eyes to darken like Gaara's. All the Biju were originally one being, he said. No matter how far apart they are, or how tightly they're sealed away, they can always communicate with one another. If the Biju gets along with the person they're sealed in, they can allow that person to join in the conversation. He cut the chakra and his eyes went back to normal. It's thanks to them I was able to learn about Oto's plot. Can they be trusted? Tsunade asked, unwilling to risk Konoha's safety on the words of people she'd never even met. Depends on who you mean by they. Naruto said. I can guarantee the Biju can be trusted. Once they found out I had talked to the sage and was trying to protect them, they happily agreed to help. As for the Jinchuriki, Naruto trailed off. They aren't going to get in the way, but they aren't going to do anything to help us. But most of us are working together, so we should be fine. We can go into more detail about that later. Jiraiya said. I'm more curious to know what happened afterwards. Naruto nodded and turned to the map, before instantly regretting his need to be dramatic and rip it. Doing the best he could, he began showing his route. Well, once we managed to get Kurama and Shukaku to agree to help us, they were able to track the other Biju for me. Naruto said. From Suna I head north towards Iwa. There I met Son Goku and Kokuo, and throughout their chakra gained limited forms of lava and boil releases. Don't sell yourself short, Mei said. I've seen you do some truly impressive things for someone who was only just learning how to use them. Naruto blushed and scratched his cheek. Thank you, he said as she sent a flirty wink his way. Tsunade cleared her throat, causing Naruto to quickly turn back to the map. After that I headed east to Taki, where I met Chome. Naruto stared off into space for a moment before giving a sad sigh. Before anyone could ask, he continued. Next I planned on heading to Kumo, but the only way there was through the land of rice fields. That's when things got interesting. Interesting. Kushina laughed. That's how you're going to describe it? I mean, it's not wrong, but really. Naruto shrugged. I'm a ninja, not a writer, he said. But anyways, as I was cutting through the land of rice fields, I ended up stumbling across one of Orochimaru's bases. Jiraiya and Tsunade both tensed up. I decided to investigate to see if I could learn anything about what was happening with Sasuke. The two Sannin face-palmed. What I found was a massive ceiling array. I looked through all the nearby notes and found out Orochimaru had been experimenting with the Edo Tensei and was trying and failing to resurrecting Kushina. Wait, Jiraiya said. If Orochimaru wasn't able to resurrect her, why did it work for you? He was very curious to find out more about this technique. What Orochimaru didn't realize was it's not enough for the person to be dead. Naruto said. Their souls have to be in the afterlife. No matter what, Kushina would have been impossible to resurrect as long as her soul was locked away in my seal. Seeing Jiraiya's confused face, Kushina spoke up.